A beloved Angel Flight pilot and his wife lose their lives just after takeoff in Massachusetts. And a helicopter crashes on a beach in California, injuring a little boy. This and a twin-engine airplane impacts the ground just north of the hangar where I keep my Cessna, killing 2. Let's go over all 3 of these on Taking Off. Hi, I'm Dan Milliken. It's Tuesday, October 14th, 2025. Breaking news from this weekend. Let's go over what we know about these 3 separate crashes. A TBM crashes just after takeoff, Massachusetts. A helicopter spins out of control. But before that, closer to home, real close to me, was a crash at my airport, Hicks Airfield in North Fort Worth yesterday, October 12th. And we'll start with New England. Yesterday morning, a horrible crash out of New Bedford Regional Airport, Massachusetts. A Socata TBM 700 crashed on Interstate 195, killing both people on board, a 68-year-old pilot and his 66-year-old wife, and minor injuries to 1 driver. The pilot had a private pilot certificate for a single-engine land and an instrument rating. They had just departed for Kenosha Regional in Wisconsin. The TBM took off runway 5 with the weather reported as winds 040 at 16 gusting 30, 2 miles visibility, light rain with a cloud layer at 900 feet. The area was dealing with a nor'eastern that was moving through the region. It's not clear yet if the weather was a factor in the crash. The flight was about 2.5 minutes total. According to ADS-B data, it never got above 750 feet, and after takeoff, it looks like they were struggling to maintain altitude. My heart goes out to the families of the 2 on board. They were very well loved in the community and were involved in Angel Flights, a program that brings private pilots and people needing medical transportation and can't afford it together. The crash caused a temporary closure of I-195. The NTSB is on site this morning and have launched the investigation. I've reached out to a Socata TBM expert, Joe Casey, to get his thoughts. Joe, news reports are stating that it's a single-engine small plane. But a TBM 700, that's almost misleading in its description, isn't it?
Yeah, this is a very high performance, very rugged, 6 passenger, but it's got a PT6 engine on the front, a very high VMO, max operating speed, which tells you about the strength of the wing and the strength of the fuselage. This is an airplane that we fly a lot, and it is just considered to be the robust, strong, great business platform for getting around the country in terms of just a wonderful, wonderful airplane that's strong and capable.
Walk me through the performance of a TBM taking off from, an airport like New Bedford.
New Bedford's at a low altitude and the temperature was cool, so the density altitude was low. I would anticipate the takeoff roll to be somewhere around 1,500 feet down the runway. No, it's not very far at all, and then leave the ground and climb out at between 1,500 and 2,000 feet a minute. So this would be it would be a very good performing aircraft in terms of the array of aircraft that are out there. 1,500, 2,000 feet a minute would be no problem for this airplane.
So probably in 20, 30 seconds, it reached 750 feet and it went no higher. What will investigators be looking at, a few seconds into this flight when it got to 750 feet and no further?
Right. They're looking at the engine. They're looking at was there a power problem, meaning that the engine failed to produce power? Was the power pulled back by the pilot? Was the power rolled back in terms of there's a phenomenon that can occur called a power rollback? But it sure does look like the engine was not producing takeoff power, and there was some kind of an anomaly happening here. A properly running PT6 engine on the front end of a TBM would climb out and have no trouble at all with 2 people on board, even if it were full fuel.
Some people are commenting about the weather. They had a nor'eastern that was coming in. So winds were 040 out of the northeast at 16 gusting 30. Is this a factor in this incident?
Yeah, hard to tell, but I wouldn't think so. It's interesting. On the day of this accident, I finished up training with a client. We were in the Appalachian Mountains and near Chattanooga, Tennessee, and the client was then flying back home to the New England states, very near Boston, where this airplane was taking off, returning back. And we looked at the weather really, really closely, not to look at the accident flight, but to help this pilot as he's completing training, going back home. And the weather just didn't seem that bad. There's strong winds, but they're more straight line winds and definitely some rain in the area, but it wasn't a heavily convective area. It wasn't something that gave us great pause or concern. Weather-wise, I would have had no hesitation taking this flight that I saw. The only thing that was interesting to me on this particular flight is that the crash definitely appeared to not be a stall spin. In other words, stall spins don't have a debris field that tends to have where they come straight down. This has a debris field as if the airplane was under control, meaning that they were flying, which makes me think that this pilot may have just done a great job, and the best scenario that he had may have been what he took. And so my heart goes out to the pilot in this case, because it may just be that he had engine trouble with no good options.
Not only is Joe considered the TBM guru, he also flew helicopters in the Army and he ferries KingAIr, so we'll get back to Joe shortly. Before we cover the dramatic crash of the Bell 222 in Huntington Beach, California, let's cover a story that is close to home, literally. My home airport, where my Cessna 210 Lola is hangared, is Hicks Airfield in North Fort Worth. On Sunday, October 12th, a twin-engine KingAIr C-90, registration November 291 Charlie Charlie, crashed, killing two just north of the airport. The pilot was a father of four, and his dad was on board with him. He held a private pilot certificate for airplane single-engine land and multi-engine land and instrument. The plane had departed Alliance Airport about 6 miles to the northeast of Hicks and departed the area to the northwest. An ADS-B track shows they headed north towards the Texas-Oklahoma border and did a figure-8 track near Nocona, Texas for several loops. And then they headed south towards Bridgeport Airport, where they did a rectangle track that looks like a published hold for the RNAV runway 18 into Bridgeport approach. Then they continued the approach to Bridgeport, getting down to 1,400 feet before continuing straight ahead like a practice missed approach and turned left or east. The tracking suggests they were on a final approach into Hicks. This time they wouldn't be practicing an approach because Hicks doesn't have any approaches.
Report traffic, KingAIr C-91 Charlie Charlie, 5 mile final, not Bridgeport, Hicks.
While tracking towards runway 14 Hicks, the aircraft suddenly turned left and impacted the ground in a construction yard with trucks and trailers parked, killing both people on board. No one on the ground was injured. The plane caught fire immediately and damaged about 10 trucks. The KingAIr C-90 is the smaller of the KingAIrs, a very reliable twin-engine aircraft utilizing the Pratt & Whitney PT6 turboprop engines. It can seat 9. This aircraft was made in 1977 and is registered to Mobile EHR Incorporated. I know a couple of C-90 owners, and it's a great plane. Pressurized cabin, decent speed, and the reliability of two PT6s. Now let's talk about Hicks Airfield, my home airport. The single runway runs 1432 and is just over 3,700 feet long and 60 feet wide. Looking at the surveillance footage, the plane impacts almost inverted, cartwheeling to its right and not going very far before hitting a truck and exploding. This is maybe 2 blocks from my hangar, and it's incredibly tragic. Sunday was beautiful weather at Hicks. Another thing I'll bring up, when I first heard the news, I wondered if it was a possible mid-air. The crash location is right where the base leg turns to final for 1-4. And just several months ago, when I was in the pattern coming into land, a small plane not on radio and not using ADS-B almost hit me, which is another reason to stay vigilant and looking outside the aircraft when you're flying. And ADS-B is mandated in that airspace, but he didn't have it. No other aircraft were reported in this crash. Joe has ferried KingAirs all over the world. Here's his take.
Hicks is a narrow and short field for some aircraft, but the C-90, one of the advantages of a C-90 is that it has the capability to get in and out of a short field like Hicks. And I mean, if I were coming in and out of that airport, I would want to be on my P's and Q's. I would want to fly the approaches, not haphazardly or whimsically approaching the airport on a landing, but could it land and take off there easily? And the answer is yes.
Joe, we don't know what happened. Investigators will undoubtedly be looking at one of the common twin engine failures, which is you lose an engine and you go into what pilots call VMC roll. And we don't know that that was the case here. For non-pilots watching this right now, can you explain what a VMC roll is?
Yeah, so a all multi-engine aircraft that have the wings that are off of the center line, I mean, have the engines off the center line. In other words, the engines are on the wings. Will have two lines on the airspeed indicator. One's a blue line, which will give you best rate of climb single engine, and the other one's a red line, which will be minimum controllable airspeed. And that minimum V, and we call it VMC, or velocity of minimum control. And the idea behind it is you have full power on the good engine, and the dead engine is going to be um, dead. In other words, it's not doing anything. And the airplane is going to want to yaw into the dead engine. And that causes a left, or in this case, in the case of a King Air, a left yaw, and the airplane's going to want to roll to the left as well. And the only way you can control that if you're below VMC is by reducing power on the good engine and pitching forward to gain airspeed. So if you fly below VMC, the airplane's uncontrollable. It will literally flip over on its back and yaw into the dead engine. The aircraft's and every multi-engine pilot will should understand this and know about it, and we train to it. It's certainly a terrible place to be slow with a dead engine on a multi-engine airplane.
Thanks, Joe. We'll get back to him in a moment. We do not know why the King Air crashed. Investigators will be working on that. We don't know if it was training or sightseeing or whatever. Let's remember, 4 children are left fatherless and without a grandfather. This is a huge tragedy, and I hope that we can determine what happened so that we can avoid repeating it in the future. In Huntington Beach, California, on October 11th, 2025, a Bell 222 with 2 people on board crashed into palm trees at the Hyatt Regency. The Bell 222 is the same aircraft used in the hit TV show from the 80s, Airwolf. The 2 people on the helicopter and 3 on the ground were taken to the hospital. There was a Cars and Copters event taking place there, and other helicopters had already landed in the parking lot of the Hyatt Regency there on the beach. Cameras captured the 222 passing by the hotel windows with gear up. As the helicopter came around to begin landing, that's when trouble began. The helicopter lost its tail rotor thrust and spun into the palm trees by the hotel, injuring the 3 on the ground, including a little boy. And miraculously, the 2 on board the helicopter and the 3 on the ground did not die. No fatalities. Once again, here's Joe.
Sure looks like what we would call loss of tail rotor thrust. And in this case, the tail rotor had a pitch link that appears to have come loose, broken free, a mechanical failure or of some sort is what it appears. And what it means is that that tail rotor's now, or that tail rotor, which is what we call an anti-torque tail rotor, is now not producing the power that it should, the thrust that it should, and which is and whenever you're at a near a hover, in other words, you're making an approach, you've got a lot of collective, a lot of torque, and so the thing that's keeping the helicopter going straight is the anti-torque tail rotor, and when the anti-torque tail rotor stops producing thrust or is greatly reduced in thrust, in this case, because you have a pitch link that appears to have broken, then the helicopter is going to spin. And there's nothing you can do about it except drop the collective and in order to reduce the collective instantly. And every helicopter pilot knows this, and in order to reduce the collective quickly. The problem is they're very close to the ground with very low airspeed, and you just end up you're in a place where you just have no options at all. The pilot has very little ability to affect this except to drop the collective and then cushion the landing as best possible. And when I look at the video, I think to myself, if I were in that in that situation, what would I do? And I would hope that I would do as good as that pilot did.
All right, Joe, coming back to you for final thoughts. 3 accidents in 3 different aircraft, that you're very familiar with. What's your final thoughts?
My final thoughts are these are 3 great aircraft. Like I would have zero qualms putting my family, my loved ones on board. If I'm the pilot and I'm flying any of these 3 aircraft, they are wonderful. The TBM is one of the strongest and best aircraft with one of the best engines on the front. The KingAIr is the same, except it has 2 of those same PT6 engines. And the Bell helicopter that had to crash is just a wonderful, wonderful helicopter. So when we talk about these 3 crashes, these are 3 great and wonderful aircraft, and I would have no qualms putting my family and loved ones on board. It's interesting that 3 different aircraft, all of them stalwart airplanes and helicopters that we just rely upon in general aviation. If I had another thought about all 3 of them is that they're fairly high profile cases. They have video that goes with it. A lot of people saw it, a lot of videos associated with all 3 crashes. And but it brings me back to the latest DPE meeting that we had, where we looked at the accident rates, and we've talked about what goes on. The accident rate in all of general aviation, all of aviation, is going down. It has been on a downward trajectory. I want to say we're doing a great job, because there's always room for improvement, but we are getting better and better and better at aviation. Even though you see these high profile accidents like this happen, aviation's alive and well and doing really, really good. And the safety record of all the aircraft that are represented with these crashes are doing really, really good. My heart goes out to all the families that are related to them.
Great thoughts. Thanks, Joe. And that's our report for today. Thank you to our sponsors like flyingeyesoptics.com/takingoff10, where you'll get 10% off the best glasses and sunglasses for under headsets and helmets. Check it out. Also, we have links in the description below. And if you want to support us bringing you the aviation news, check out our merch store below. Fall is upon us, and we have some cool hoodies and other items with both the Taking Off logo and our sister channel in the Hangars logo. And I even have a Chewy the Co-Pilot line of products. Punch it, Chewy. Every purchase helps us. You can also support us by watching another one of our reports right here. Thanks again, and remember, superior judgment trumps superior skill. Take care. Stay safe out there.